Welcome to Founders Corner. This show is all about sharing impactful lessons for entrepreneurs from brilliant minds who have lived and learned through the startup journey and built amazing companies. This podcast is from Omidyar Network's emerging technology team, who invest in early-stage startups that aim to build great for-profit businesses that can change the world and create impact at scale. On today's show, you'll hear from Yancey Strickler, the co-founder and CEO of Kickstarter. Yancey looks back on the past 12 years with the company. He shares the origin story of Kickstarter, missteps he's made along the way, and lessons on growth, scaling, hiring by attracting and filtering the right kind of talent for the company, and lessons in leadership. Now let's get started with host and Omidyar Network partner, Shapriya Mahesh.
Yancey, thanks for being with us this morning.
Yeah, thank you.
So I just wanted to start with the history of Kickstarter. Where were you when you and Perry came up with the idea, and how did you decide to do it?
So the original idea for Kickstarter came from Perry Chen, who's our founder and now our chairman, was the CEO for the first 4 years we were around. And he was living in New Orleans and wanted to throw a concert. The idea was to get these two DJs to come play a show in some warehouse, and ended up to do it. He's going to have to front like $20,000, something like that. They wanted first class tickets, the whole thing, and that was just too much for him to put up, too much risk. But he had this thought of what if he could have put the idea for the concert on the web, and people could buy tickets using their credit cards, but they're not charged unless the show sells out. And he just sort of like that popped into his head and just struck him as that seems like that would work. And then he immediately set about trying to figure out how to do it. This is 2001, 2002.
Wow.
So that, as you know, is a very different time for the internet.
Yes.
Like you had to be an engineer to start something. So he spent the next 3 or 4 years trying to get it off the ground, trying various things, everything you can think of. And he moved back to New York in 2005, where he and I met. I was working as a music critic. I was reviewing music and also film for The Village Voice and Entertainment Weekly, and my whole career at that point had been as a journalist. And he told me about this idea, and to be honest, I didn't like it at first. I just kind of pictured American Idol. I'm like, wait, if you let people vote for what they want, won't they just like choose terrible things? But he was like, no, think of the sculptor in Iowa whose like work is very special, and like he or she find their audience online, and and they can gather the 100 people who understand their work and like produce something. And so we immediately started thinking about it in terms of niches, and feeling like, okay, sure, maybe the world doesn't need this to make King Kong 5 or whatever, but maybe there are things at a smaller scale that just this really does make sense for them. So that was in 2005. So then he asked me to be a part of it, and we started working on it together. We tried hiring external developers. The guy I went to college with, that went quite poorly. We lost all of our money that we'd gotten from friends and family. And I remember at the time we met a woman named Sunny Bates, who's a connector here in New York, and who took pity on us and introduced us to many people, Katerina Fake and Andy Baio, and people that became very instrumental in Kickstarter's growth. And she started showing us around, and we met a lot of people who would tell us that everything we were doing was wrong, and our attitude was, fuck off, old man. Maybe in your day, but it's different. Yeah, most of those things were right. And during the midst of this point, as we were really struggling, we got really lucky, and we came across, we met Charles Adler, who became the third co-founder of Kickstarter. And Charles is a designer and had more product experience than Perry or I. And once he got involved, the product took a stronger shape, and Perry had a partner to think about the design with. And then it started to come together, and I'd say the last piece of Voltron that had to happen for Kickstarter launch was we met an engineer named Lance Ivey, who became our architect and was with the company till the end of last year. So 8 years with Kickstarter.
That's great.
But once he got involved, the site was ready to launch, and like 3 months later. So from that point of Perry first having the idea to Kickstarter launching was 8 years.
Wow.
And in just a week, we will celebrate our 8th birthday.
Talk about how becoming a public benefit corporation fits into that.
So we started exploring it probably in 2014, and I think around the end of that year, we decided, let's go for this. There's an email Perry sent me around that time that I remember vividly and just shared with the company a couple weeks ago, but it was an email called Existential Kickstarter that was just asking, what are the existentially valid reasons for our continued existence? Like, what do we need to do to continue to have this be worth everyone's life going into it? And one of the things that stood out from those conversations was the idealism of the company. And, what would it mean to really own that more? And that seems like an opportunity because I don't think our perspectives of the world are super unique, but they're probably unique for people in our position. And so why don't we think about how to express that and how to influence through that? And so we started looking into becoming a public benefit corporation, found that through that you write a charter that says what you're to be held legally responsible for. So Perry did the first draft of that. What we ended up publishing was probably 75% what Perry sort of his initial thoughts, and then we worked on it together. And that laid out, like, here's what you should expect of Kickstarter. And also for us, here's what we expect for any future generations of leaders at Kickstarter. And there were 5 big points to it. One was that we would support the creative community, both through our direct services, but also that we would engage on issues affecting artists that had nothing to do with Kickstarter, but that, we would put a stake in the ground and fight for the creative community in whatever ways we were able to do so. Second thing was that we would observe a kind of corporate code of conduct, which includes we prohibit ourselves from using esoteric tax avoidance strategies to minimize our tax burden. We will not lobby for any policies that are not in the best interest of our community. We will not claim rights in our privacy policy that we do not need. We also pledge to donate 5% of after-tax profits to arts education and to organizations fighting systemic inequality. We have a provision all around employee artists and that for their ability to take sabbaticals to work on projects,
which that's awesome.
Probably maybe 5 to 10 employees have done over the years. Several of which those projects have taken them on to leave us, which is sad, but we're proud of them. And the final provision is just all about what we do to try to create an equitable workforce, and just saying, like, a more equitable world should begin here and also with the actions that we take. So just trying to lay out, this is how we think we should behave. But the bigger picture thing that I think a PBC does, the other name PBC in the market is Patagonia. They were one of the first to do it, and they were very helpful to us in this process. We have so much respect for them. But the opportunity here is for PBC to not be a granola hippie kind of structure, but for it to be futuristic. And if the actions of Patagonia and Kickstarter and other companies that I think will continue to do this and find even more innovative ways to use the structure, that what it could ultimately do is create an expectation in society that companies are responsible for the public good in some form.
And in a world where, talent, it's a fight for talent, right? Engineers, designers, the mission of this, the way you think about yourselves and the world, is probably a huge advantage to attract the kinds of people you want to attract.
Yeah, it's first, it's a great filtering mechanism for who you might not want to add to your culture, because we talk to people right off the bat, like, hey, here's how we're wired. We're not trying to make as much money as possible. If you're looking to maximize your earning potential for the next 4 years, like, maybe you should call Facebook or Google or whatever. So we might not be what you're looking for. But if you want to maximize the value of your time in the sense that every second you're away from your family or not doing the things you yourself would want to do, you are contributing to something meaningful and valuable, and that you'll be paid a market rate, and that we're all in this together and we're all owners of this company and owners of this vision, then we have an opportunity unlike any other. So I have not experienced us losing a candidate who we really wanted because of this. I think it's what separates us from other organizations.
So when you look back at the 8 years, what were you're now huge, $3 billion you're approaching, that money to creators. What were the challenges? What were some of the real growth pains as you were scaling? And what would you do differently now, looking back?
Well, I'm thinking selfishly first and just say, I think the challenges have been understanding what it means to be the leader of an organization. Those were, I had some history doing that just because I'd worked at other jobs before, but certainly for Perry's first time ever working in an organization. He's an artist, never, just very unfamiliar. And just understanding what it means to lead and just how dramatically the context of leadership changes based on where you are and what people need or don't need anymore. I think the big question has just been, we invented a space. Other people had worked had tried crowdfunding before. No platform had ever no one had come up with any sort of form or structure for it. The crowdfunding as you know it today was invented April 28, 2009 when Kickstarter launched. There are other things before, but they just did not look or behave the same way. We knew our focus was going to be on creative projects. It wasn't going to be everything. So we knew that charity would be a big market, and GoFundMe has done that. And we also had specific ideas about the sorts of creative projects we wanted to support. And so there's just always been space left beyond Kickstarter that GoFundMe has gone into, Indiegogo has gone into, hundreds of other platforms. We've always been the market leader, but what should we do as the market leader? Should we try to capture all those markets? Well, no, we don't really care about all of crowdfunding. We care about artists and creative people. So how is it that we need to serve them? And I think understanding how to think about that and how the product should evolve to that, I wish that we had come to a couple years earlier than we did. Those are the things we're working on now, and we're experiencing very positive results from working on those things. But there was a couple of years of us trying to search for what is it that Kickstarter needs to be for somebody. And I don't know if this is a problem that every market leader faces. I think we felt, having created this industry and not looking around and seeing many analogs, it just wasn't clear what you're supposed to do. Mm-hmm. And so I think that was hard and still is hard, still feeling our way through that. So I think that was an interesting challenge that we didn't anticipate. And then there's, and ultimately when you're talking about 125 people, you're also just talking about emotional challenges, interpersonal challenges, things like that. And that's true for me as a leader, for I think everyone here.
So, as a filmmaker and a tech person, I have to say I love what Kickstarter does, right? It combines to me the best of what creators need and of what tech people, it brings both together. In my mind, this is like the perfect balance. So thank you for working on it and for your very unique and passionate approach to building the company. I'm very excited that it exists. Yeah. So thanks for making the time to chat with us today.
Yeah, thank you.
That was the conversation with Shapriya Mahesh and Kickstarter co-founder and CEO Yancey Strickler. Special thanks to Yancey for joining the show and sharing so many insights for entrepreneurs, startups, and those leaders looking to build and scale their organizations. To learn more about Kickstarter, Yancey, or to fund the Kickstarter community's next great project, visit Kickstarter.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please write a review on iTunes and let us know what you think on Twitter @Omidyar Network. Be sure to subscribe and visit our website, omidyar.com, to learn more. Thanks for listening to Founders Corner, and we'll see you next time.